So, books. I've been reading them for a change. Actually, uh, I pre-ordered this a couple months ago and I never got to it. So, in the last 2 weeks, I had a bunch of downtime. So I went to a local secondhand bookstore and got actually not this one, actually this book. Is it something? Okay, actually this book. It's such a page turner, so after finishing it, I was looking for more, so I read this one. In just three settings, actually. The story is something, well, I can relate to a lot, being one of the internet arguers, a YouTuber, over the past couple of years. So after I finish reading it, I have to talk about what I think, really. So at first the story was like sci-fi, but then April got more and more famous. I can tell by how she describes it. The book is kind of about how she was regretting the action she took after being famous. So I was like, okay, the author's trying to make internet famous people seem more human to us with all the nitty gritty details, like how April learns to build a brand, like how she pretends to be someone she isn't, how she learned those things from many professionals around her telling her what to do. So one example would be the scene where she was at the hospital and president come visiting and she got makeup done for her and she was asked, how would you like to look on the interview on TV? And another example would be the scene that they persuaded April to write a book and like talking about the advantage of writing a book. How yeah, that was interesting. It was interesting to learn all those things happening in the professional world, having an agent and all that, because it allows me to better understand uh, why these things happen, what people are trying to do when they do those things. Why do internet famous people do the thing they do? Maybe there's another reason rather than what it looks like on the surface. And obviously, Hank would have some first-hand experience with that. Being Tier 3 famous himself, he would certainly have talked to many Tier 4 famous people. I mean, heck, he talked to Obama, so Obama is definitely Tier 4 famous. And I mean, that's what the cover means, right? I think that's what the cover means. I mean, most people doesn't recognize you, but for some people, they really recognize you. And for them, you're like a god to them, and at least that's for Tier 3 famous. Yeah. Maybe I think that's I think that's a yeah. And then there's a story about arguing with people over the internet. For this part, my feeling is kind of complicated because having read the story, we know what Hank is trying to say is probably political argument grabs people's attention, and that attention gets turned into money. So there's an industry represented by Peterman behind it. I hope I'm pronouncing everyone's name right, but probably not. But the message is clear when April writes. Instead of talking to anyone that could help her when she was angry, she stayed up and kept arguing with the opposing side. And in the book, April actually talks about how she was just as bad as Defender by simplifying them down to having no real argument, by having normal people couldn't understand why they believe that, and how she wanted the fame to do something good, but she ended up doing a lot of stupid things. So we can definitely kind of catch that idea from the book. And for me, that was pretty good. It felt like something I've always been waiting to have someone else to say it too. Basically, it made me feel that I'm not crazy for thinking of those things. I find the way people argue is much a bigger problem than what they are arguing about, because the way they argue have no guarantee to produce a good outcome when people are effectively talking over each other to satisfy themselves. Felt like an antidote that we have always been waiting for to this incredibly polarizing society, at least politically in the US and probably everywhere. But the problem I have is how Hank is trying to make this point. We know April regrets her actions because she told us so with her own words, and this feels like, well, kind of abstract and preachy, to be honest. It feels like Hank really have good intentions. He know what's wrong with April's side, and practically, to be honest, his side. But he don't have a good grasp of what the other argument is. So the their side of the argument is not really fleshed out. So they're not more reasonable. They're not that relatable to the reader. And the book literally says one of the problems is two sides rarely interact outside the context of what they disagree with. Yet the only thing we learn about Peter and his defenders are about the thing they disagree with April. Defenders are the bad guys in this book, and that's a problem. So despite April kind of regrets simplifying down their narrative, how their narrative works is never really explained to me in a complex and nuanced way in the book. It's just, oh, they're afraid, kind of. It felt like as if Hank and people who help with this book, his editors and co, neither of them have a good idea why the other side believe they are right. For example, to conservatives in terms of political arguments, liberals are driven to satisfy their sense of righteousness. That's probably what they believe, I think. Regardless of whether what they are doing actually helps, and when it doesn't help, one is causing trouble to other people, which is why other people will want to shut them down. They just say it's racism, homophobia, Islamophobia. And in the end, it's kind of sad, really, when your message about understanding others complexly itself isn't complex and nuanced enough to get people to sympathize with it. I want to stress this. It's not okay, it's not good enough to just have the good intentions. Hank gets it. That's why April had all the good intention and she was used by her agent to make money all along. But there's one more step to take, which is actually acting. And you have to actually overcome the fear that you might be wrong and doing something that breaks down the barrier separating the political sides. Actually try to think that maybe the other side do have a point. They are right. And actually try to convince yourself that. It's not good enough to just have good intentions because our brains are all subconsciously selfish when arguing, and that's what psychology tells us. So having read to the end and understanding Carls are here to observe how we would react, well, it makes me a bit disappointed because Carls don't seem to be terribly concerned with possibly terrible outcomes. First of all, they don't know what might come out of it, right? We know that, hence why they wanted to see how we react, which implies they know that bad interactions, bad reactions might happen like the terrorist attack. So I'm not saying doing such an experiment is bad. There's certainly a lot of benefit to Carls and to human, but the problem is you don't do that kind of experiment without precautions. Not in even today's non-alien real-life science, you always think about what might come out of it, what problem might come out of it, and you take proper precaution. And finally, there seems to be some part of the plot that doesn't really make sense to me. For example, I don't understand why can't the aliens just prevent that guy from stabbing April without killing him. Like, if they are technologically advanced aliens, maybe Carl's hand or whatever could do something. Maybe they can do something. Don't kill the guy. Murders are people. They murder for reasons. I know it might sound ludicrous, and my mother is murdered, and I really, probably you think it's ridiculous for me to say, but I sympathize with a murderer, and he doesn't deserve to be executed. There's problem with him too. Like there's outside factors that he cannot control that put him down that road. And yeah, anyways, anyways, and another thing will be I cannot agree when Carl says there's no way to know without context, and that's the end at the end of the book. There are ways. Science, sure, it wouldn't work perfectly to predict what will happen on a global scale, but again, science will tell you what to look out for before preparing your global experiment. So there would be a smaller chance of people suffering from it. I also don't quite understand why April is trying to hide 767 sequence when I mean she was the only person who can access a part of dream. So even if other people figure out what the proper thing to do is, she would still be in control because I mean she's the only person who has access, isn't it? I mean, since other people can access the, I mean, at the time she doesn't know the answer is public, and so that part kind of doesn't make sense to me. But that's all I have to say about this book. It's remarkably relatable to me. It's just the story of an internet creator. And I don't know. I don't know what to do next. Probably I'm going to read more books. And it has been helpful. Reading books has been helpful. It helps me regain some sanity. It has been a pretty tough period for me now. I won't get into it now, but maybe when it's all over, I might make a video about it. Let me just be short. I still haven't found a job in Japan yet, so the future is kind of uncertain at this point, and that's most of it. And I'm kind of depressed because of that. But yeah. So and if you're here waiting for the Esperanto video, it's going to come out. Don't worry. I'm still working on it. It's probably going to come out next week. And thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.